with songs like Margaritaville and Cheeseburger in Paradise. He became a folk hero to fans known as parrot heads. He also became a millionaire hundreds of times over. Jimmy Buffett, the singer, songwriter, author, sailor and entrepreneur whose roguish brand of island escapism on hits like Margaritaville and Cheeseburger in Paradise made him something of a latter-day folk hero, especially among his devoted following of so-called parrot heads, died on Friday. He was 76. His death was announced in a statement on his website. It did not say where he died or specify a cause. Mr. Buffett had rescheduled a series of concerts this spring, saying he had been hospitalized, although he offered no details. Peopled with pirates, smugglers, beach bums and barflies, Mr. Buffett's genial, self-deprecating songs conjured a world of sun, salt water and non-stop parties animated by the calypso country rock of his Limber Coral Reefer band. His live shows abounded with sing-along anthems and festive tropical iconography, making him a perennial draw on the summer concert circuit, where he built an ardent fan base akin to the Grateful Dead's Deadheads. Mr. Buffett found success primarily with albums. He enjoyed only a few years on the pop singles chart, and Margaritaville, his 1977 breakthrough hit, was his only single to reach the Pop Top 10. It blew out my flip-flop stepped on a pop-top on my heel. Had to cruise on back home, he sang woozily to the song's lilting Caribbean rhythms. But there's booze in the blender has, soon it will render frozen concoction that helps me hang on. Mr. Buffett's music was often described as Gulf and Western TA play, on the name of the conglomerate Gulf Western, the former parent of Paramount Pictures, as well as a nod to his fusion of laid-back twang and island-themed lyrics. His songs tended to be of two main types: wistful ballads like Come Monday and A Pirate Looks at 40, and clever up-tempo numbers like Cheeseburger in Paradise. Some were both like Son of a Sailor, a 1978 homage to Mr. Buffett's seafaring grandfather, written with the producer Norbert Putnam. The Caribbean and the Gulf Coast were Mr. Buffett's muses, and no place was more important than King West Flay. He first visited the island at the urging of Jerry Jeff Walker, his sometimes songwriting and drinking partner, after a gig fell through in Miami in the early 1970s. When I found Key West and the Caribbean, I wasn't really successful yet, Mr. Buffett said in a 1989 interview with the Washington Post. But I found a lifestyle, and I knew that whatever I did would have to work around my lifestyle. The locales provided Mr. Buffett with more than just a breezy sailing life and grist for his songwriting. They were also the impetus for the creation of a tropical-themed business empire that included a restaurant franchise, a hotel chain and boutique tequila t-shirt and footwear lines, all of which made him a millionaire hundreds of times over. His claim to squandering his wealth notwithstanding, Mr. Buffett proved to be a shrewd manager of his considerable fortune. Forbes this year estimated his net worth at $1 billion. If Mr. Buffett is a pirate, to borrow one of his favorite images, it is hardly because of his days palling around with dope smugglers in the Caribbean, the critic Anthony de Curtis wrote in a 1999 essay for the New York Times. He is a pirate in the way that Bill Gates and Donald Trump have styled themselves as plundering rebels, visionary artists of the deal, not bound by the societal restrictions meant for smaller, more careful men. Mr. Buffett was also an accomplished author. He was one of only 6 writers, along with the likes of Ernest Hemingway, John Steinbeck and William Styron, to top both the Times' fiction and non-fiction bestseller lists. By the time he wrote Tales from Margaritaville 1989, the first of his 3 no-on bestsellers, he had abandoned the hedonistic lifestyle he once embraced. James William Buffett was born on Des. 25, 1946 in Pascagoula, Miss. One of 3 children of Mary Lorraine Pete and James Delaney Buffett Jr. Both parents were longtime employees of the Alabama Dry Dock and Shipbuilding Company. His father was a manager of government contracts, and his mother, known simply as Pete's, was an assistant director of industrial relations. Jimmy was raised Roman Catholic in Mobile, Ayla, where he took up the trombone at St. Ignatius Catholic School. He went to high school at another Catholic institution in Mobile, the McGill Institute. In 1964, he enrolled in classes at Auburn University. He flunked out and later attended the University of Southern Mississippi. He also began performing in local nightclubs. He graduated with a degree in history in 1969 before moving to the French Quarter of New Orleans and playing in a cover band on Bourbon Street. He moved to Nashville in 1970, hoping to make it as a country singer, while working as a journalist for Billboard magazine. Mr. Buffett was credited with breaking the story about the disbanding of the pioneering bluegrass duo Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs. Down to Earth, his debut album, was released on Andy Williams's Barnaby label that year. It sold a reported 324 copies. Mr. Buffett's second album for Barnaby, High Cumberland Jubilee, went unreleased until 1976, long after he had signed with ABC Dunhill and recorded A White Sport Coat and a Pink Crustacean 1973, which featured the debauched party anthem. Why Don't We Get Drunk? Mr. Buffett had a fondness for puns. The title A White Sport Coat was inspired by the song A White Sport Coat and a Pink Carnation, a 1957 pop hit for the country singer Marty Robbins. Another album was called Last Mango in Paris. Mr. Buffett's album Living and Dying in 3/4 Time, released in 1974, included a version of the comedian Lord Buckley's God's Own Drunk. Come Monday, a lovelorn track from that record, became his first top 40 hit. Aone, also from 1974, was named for the oceanfront highway that runs along Florida's Atlantic coastline. It was Mr. Buffett's first album to contain references to Key West and maritime life. But it was his platinum-selling Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes in 1977, which contained the blockbuster hit Margaritaville, that finally catapulted him to stardom. Finn's another hit single was released in 1979. A series of popular releases followed, culminating in 1985 with Songs You Know by Heart, a compilation of Mr. Buffett's most beloved songs to date. It became the best-selling album of his career. Mr. Buffett also opened the first of his many Margaritaville stores in 1985. That was the year that Timothy B. Schmidt, a former bassist with the Eagles who was then a member of the Coral Reefer Band, coined the term parrot heads to describe Mr. Buffett's staunch legion of fans, the bulk of whom were baby boomers. A supporter of conservationist causes, Mr. Buffett moved away from the Keys in the late 1970s because of the area's increasing commercialization. He initially relocated to Aspen Colo, before making his home on St. Bart's in the Caribbean. He also had houses in Palm Beach, Flagg, and Sag Harbor, NNY, on eastern Long Island. In addition to touring and recording, activities he pursued into the 2020s. Mr. Buffett wrote music for movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Urban Cowboy. He also appeared in movies, including Rancho Deluxe and Jurassic World, and on television shows including the Hawaii Five-O revival of the 2010s, on which he starred as the helicopter pilot Frank Balmer, a character from his best-selling 1992 novel. Where is Joe Merchant? An avid pilot, Mr. Buffett owned several aircraft and often flew himself to his shows. In 1994, he crashed one of his airplanes in waters near Nantucket, Mass. While taking off, he survived the accident after swimming to safety with only minor injuries. In 1996, another of Mr. Buffett's planes, Hemisphere Dancer, was shot at by the Jamaican police, who suspected the craft was being used to smuggle marijuana. On board the airplane, which sustained little damage, were Bono of U2, Chris Blackwell, the founder of Island Records, and Mr. Buffett's wife and 2 daughters. The Jamaican authorities later admitted the incident was a case of mistaken identity, inspiring Mr. Buffett to write the song Jamaica Mistaica, a droll send-up of the affair. Mr. Buffett is survived by his wife, Jane Slagsvold Buffett, 2 daughters, Savannah Jane Buffett and Sarah Buffett, a son, Cameron, 2 grandsons, and 2 sisters, Lucy and Laurie Buffett. In a 1979 interview with Rolling Stone, Mr. Buffett was asked about a previous remark in which he somewhat incongruously cited the wholesome choral director Mitch Miller and the marauding Gulf Coast pirate Jen Lafitte as 2 of his greatest inspirations. Mitch Miller, for sure, Mr. Buffett said, doubtless in acknowledgement of the way his own fans sang along with him at concerts. In the old days, sing along with Mitch. Who didn't? But Jane Lafitte was my hero as a romantic character, he continued. I'm not sure he was a musical influence. His lifestyle influenced me most definitely, because I'm the very opposite of Mitch